of building it before you have product market fit is that you don't know what your salespeople are going to be selling. The more you execute, the more you de-risk this for me, the better it is for your pitch. So promises are much riskier than facts. So try to produce facts. If you don't have founder vesting, go out now and please add it to your contract if you have a co-founder. If no clients using your product 3 months after they buy it, your churn is 100%. It just hasn't happened yet.
Hi everyone and welcome to Fundraising School. I'm Andres Bilbao and in this episode we'll be talking with Rodrigo Baer. Rodrigo's a venture capitalist who's been active in the Brazilian startup ecosystem for over a decade. In this episode, we're diving into some of the biggest challenges founders encounter as they grow. These include identifying product market fit, the timing to raise a Series A, and structuring teams for scalability. Rodrigo will share his insights on the critical steps to scaling without overextending and how to avoid common pitfalls when building a sales machine before you're ready. I leave you with our conversation with Rodrigo.
Rodrigo, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me, and sorry guys for being late. We couldn't figure out which room I was in, but hopefully now it works.
Now it works, so we're all good. Rodrigo, let's start a little bit with Upload. When did you start at Upload, the different funds that you guys have inside, the partners? Let's start just with you.
Sure, we started before we met because we had started what became Upload before joining SoftBank. Halfway through the fundraising process, SoftBank approached us and invited us in. We went and spent a semester within SoftBank as the early stage team for SoftBank. And then at some point, together with SoftBank, we decided to spin off the early stage strategy, and that became Upload. So we rebranded, but the team has been together now for 3 years. 2 years as Upload itself. We are an early stage fund, so we have one fund that does pre-seed to Series A, and then another fund that does Series B. Throughout LATAM, focused on the B2B side, so a lot of fintechs, a lot of SaaS in the portfolio, and that's us.
Amazing. And it was really an amazing pleasure to work with you and the rest of your team for a while at SoftBank. Given that you guys invest at completely different stages, like from seed to pre-seed to seed, then Series A and then Series B, how do you decide or know when a company is ready for each different fund?
It's more art than science, to be honest. It's just like having a kid, right? It's very hard to pinpoint when it stops being a baby and it became a kid, and when it stops being a kid and became an adolescent. But at some point, you know, right? So it is a gray zone. And what we try to do is, if the company has raised a Series A, then it's a Series B, and it's in the other fund. That's very clear. Anything Series A and below, we don't see the difference between a pre-seed and a seed. The thing is, you don't have product market fit. If you don't have product market fit, you're either pre-seed or seed, call it whatever you want. If you do have product market fit, and now we're going to start to build a company around that product market fit, then you're a Series A company.
That makes sense. And then usually, how do you determine when a company has achieved that product market fit? Because it's different from when an investor, from when the founder believes they have achieved that product market fit to when an investor kind of understands that that's the case. Like how should a founder show that to an investor?
We got to start to see sales that you didn't do it through your network, right? So we're going to have more people buying the product. We're going to call those clients and they're going to say that they love the product, who they compare it to, how much they will pay, and they will be retained. So when you get that, at least for that small segment, you'll achieve product market fit, right? If the client's valuing and wants to pay for it, then there's PMF there. What we don't like is when the guy has a $50 MRR business and has 5 clients. That doesn't work, right? You might have PMF for those 5 clients, but that's a negligible market. So you need to prove at the larger scale. Whereas if you do have like a huge client with a very complex purchasing process, say a bank, and then he's going to pay hundreds of millions of dollars a month, then maybe one client is enough for you to claim PMF, right? So it really depends a little bit on ticket and complexity of the purchasing process for us to define how many is actually the right number for to prove the case that there is a sizable market on what you're building.
Yeah, that makes sense. It completely depends on the type of product, also on the complexity of that sales cycle. Let's say that a founder is able to actually raise that Series A before achieving that product market fit. What are the mistakes that usually happen when that's the case?
Well, that's a mistake, right?
That for sure it's a mistake. Yeah.
but that's a real mistake because the problem of raising a Series A is that you're going to have to use it. And a Series A is normally destined to build a sales team, right? And get it to a sizable scale. And the problem of building it before you have product market fit is that you don't know what your salespeople are going to be selling. You don't know what the pitch is going to be. You don't know what the client profile is. So you don't know which salespeople to bring in on board. And you create a whole bunch of noise that you don't know if the salesperson doesn't know how to sell, if the pitch is not right, if the ICP is wrong, if your marketing is wrong. You just create a lot more complexity and a lot more variables for you to debug, right? Whereas if you had one salesperson trying multiple pitches, or two salespeople, right? Because you don't want to be the risk that your salesperson sucks. But if you have two, odds of two sucking really bad, really unlikely, right? But if you have two and they're trying multiple sales pitches, you can get a hang of which one works best and not. You take that variable away, then you go for the next problem, which is how do I actually create the sales machine to deliver that pitch and to whom? So take one variable at a time. What I don't like when you scale sales team prematurely is that you're putting more variables on the table.
And on that point, exactly, like before kind of raising your Series A, you mainly have the founders selling the product, right?
Yeah, and maybe one salesperson. If the founders don't know how to sell, maybe you have one salesperson that really knows how to ask for the money. That's really normally the problem of founders. They like to pitch the product. They don't ever ask for the contract and sign contract. So closing, it tends to be very slow with founders. But other than that, yeah, it's a very small team. Should be a very small team.
I think I'm getting some questions around PMF a little bit more. Let's see if there's some that you have an answer. Oh, here, Rodrigo, how should a company handle a situation where you're running out of money and still had not fully found your product market fit?
It's a bridge. It's the only way to do it.
We have a lot of new founders here, so maybe can you explain what a bridge looks like?
A bridge is a connection between where you are and where you need to be. If you're going to run out of capital before you get there, you're going to raise a small round, very flexible terms, right, very quickly to enable you to get there. So that's a bridge, right? It's going to be a convertible. If you raise $2 million, it's going to be another $500,000, $600,000, just enough to get you to the next proof point. There are two scenarios where you use bridges. One is where you budgeted wrong or things went wrong and you're short a little bit of money, or where things are going so well that you can actually skip one proof point, right? You got to a product that's working so well that you're selling, and instead of getting to the $1 million that would enable you to raise a Series A, you'll have a decent shot of getting to $5 or $6 or $7 million, which is going to enable you to raise a Series B, raise a bridge, get less dilution, and go for the Series B.
And on those proof points, Rodrigo, once you're raising your pre-seed, of course, you're pitching your idea and you're explaining what it is that you want to prove. From then on, how should you basically set the goals for that proof points that you're gonna do in each round? Is that something that the founder does separately? Is it done in conjunction with their previous investor? How is that dynamic?
So I think there are two ways of doing it, right? And you should probably blend them. One is asking previous founders and previous investors. That helps, right? But that doesn't really tell you where the market is at this moment, right? And for example, I was just on a board meeting where this company had raised a Series A. Proof point for a Series B was $5 million. Now proof point for a Series B is $10 million. The world changed. So you need at some point during that cycle, and probably earlier rather than later, go out and start talking to your next round investors and understand what they want to see, right? To make sure that you're gonna get there. There's no point on going somewhere if you're gonna get 80% of the way. You're gonna die anyhow. So don't start swimming, right? If you're not gonna get there, you need to cross it. So make sure you know where the other side of the river is.
Well, let's go more now, like more into like the tactics of pitching. What do you usually like see in a successful early stage pitch, and how does that evolve onto like a Series A type of pitch deck? And maybe also like what should the company include in a data room in the pre-seed and seed stage versus an A?
Okay, so at the very beginning, you need to summon the problem. Why is this problem? Why does this problem exist? Why is it big enough? Why are you most capable of solving this? Why hasn't anybody solved it before? So really talk about the problem and know it inside out. It's really hurtful to the pitch when we know something that you don't know about the problem you're trying to solve. Like, I expect you to know more about the business you're trying to go after than I do, right? So know your competitors. What are their strategies? Why won't they change to compete directly with you? Or how you're gonna beat them? Know that space extremely well, right? And prove that that problem is large enough. Those are the two key components of your seed pitch, right? Large problem, painful, and I'm the right team to solve it because of this and this and that.
On the team part, Rodrigo, just to follow up on that, we had the first conversation, for example, with David Velez, where he lacked, for example, the expertise on being in the financial sector before going into launching Nubank. What do you see that shows that they're the right person? Is it an expertise? Is it that they had a really previous experience? Is it where they went to school? Like, how do you define that they're the right people to solve this problem?
Who was the first person he brought? He brought Chris, who had just relaunched the credit card business at Itaú, which is the largest bank in Brazil. She had just done exactly what she was expected to do at Nubank, which was then called EOS, wasn't even Nubank. So getting that type of talent, right, and bringing it on, this is how we're gonna solve this, right? David was really humble to say, I don't understand credit cards. Let me bring somebody that really understands credit cards. So he raised because people that invested in him had the comfort that that was the profile he would bring. If you don't know your investors, you probably should recruit that person before.
That's important. Like that, if you have the trust of the investor and you're saying, okay, I'm gonna go and these are my like weak spots and this is how I'm gonna complement the team, it's fine. But if you don't know, you have to figure out how to bring that person from the get-go as one of your co-founders and early employees.
Well, if you promise that you're gonna bring that person, it's more valuable than not bringing. If that person has signed that once you close the round, they will jump on board, even better.
Perfect.
If they're already sitting here and ready to go, better yet, right? So the more you execute, the more you de-risk this for me, the better it is for your pitch. So promises are much riskier than facts. So try to produce facts.
Okay, so now going into Series E, how does that pitch evolve?
So for Series A, now you have product market fit, right? I want to see that. I want to see your clients buying. I want to see them paying or be willing to pay, right? I want to see them using the product. And a lot of people fake it. They sell a product, and then when I go to look at usage, there are no users. Nobody's using this, right? And the guy sold a 12-month contract, so there is no churn either because it hasn't gone 12 months by. But I'm going to call those users and check, are you using? What value are you extracting of this? Show me the logs. How many people from this organization are actually connecting into your product? So you have to make sure that now you're showing the data that proves the case, that clients are buying, that clients are using, that they like it, that they're willing to pay. So a lot more data is going to come into your Series A pitch. You won't have the perfect unit economics. I know that. You don't know your churn because it hasn't been long enough for people to churn. And that's fine, right? But I want evidence that your churn is not 100%. If no clients using your product 3 months after they buy it, your churn is 100%. It just hasn't happened yet. So that's you have to create the argument that the clients are using, that they like it, that they value the solution, and show that with numbers. Whatever numbers works best for you to tell that story. If it is a product that should be used daily, let's use daily active users divided by monthly active users. If it's a product that's meant to be used once a month, let's use monthly active users and percentage of the base that's using it. And use the data to prove the story that you're telling me. For example, the guys from Pipefy, right? They went all the way to Series B pre-revenue, and they raised a massive Series B pre-revenue. But their story was, I'm going to let people use the product, build their companies on top of Pipefy, and then when I put a paywall, they will pay because I'm taking their companies hostage. At the end of the day, that's the story, right? What they did to show was they would show how many people, how many processes each organization was running on Pipefy, how many people from the organization were on Pipefy, what percentage of the organization was there. That was the component. Are clients using it? Are they using more each month? Then the second component, he would take out a city in the middle of nowhere and put a paywall there. And he would put different price points and have the guy click, oh, at $10, click. At $15, click. At $20, maybe don't click. And he would never charge them, but he wanted to know what were the different conversions from free to paid, given different price points. And then he would create a line and say, look, when I charge, these are the price points, these are the conversion rates, you can infer what's going to be my revenue. But he created the data to prove the case that he was pitching. That's what you have to do on a Series A. If you just pitch me a beautiful story, I'll find a beautiful story. I won't get excited unless you back it up.
On that part of pricing, which is so important in that Series A, especially because you have to show as well that you have users that are engaged and only using your product and potentially even paying for your product. How open are VCs or someone like you on not having that pricing completely defined? So you mentioned the story of Pipefy, which is very, very specific, and especially because they created a good argument around it. But in general, do you see people arriving to that Series A with pricing completely defined?
No, price is going to be wrong. 95% of the time is wrong, right? And it's fine. Unless if you have a pricing expert in the firm, it's very hard. Normally the founders undersell in pricing, right? It's natural. I'm okay to say, look, Take another example, Accountfy. When I started talking to him, his average ticket was 350 reais, which is like $70. Today, he sells exactly the same software at 15,000 reais a month, right? Same thing. He just changed the persona that he was selling into, and he discovered that a large price tag actually helped him sell more. And this is important. This is counterintuitive, and a lot of founders miss this, right? You have to use the pricing to signal at which level in the organization that decision needs to be taken. If you're a freemium product, guess what? The intern will sign up, right? But the intern doesn't have the power to actually make the organization change their processes. If you're selling a core banking for a bank, guess what? The intern doesn't solve a problem. You need to price it at tens of millions of dollars for the CEO and the CIO to have to make that decision. And I'll give another cool example about pricing, which was counterintuitive, right? Don't know how many of you know OList, but OList is basically a SaaS-enabled marketplace where the merchants come in and list the product, and then they take the product and they put it to sell on the different marketplaces, and they take a cut of the sale. You would look at it and say, first things, let's not charge them, right? Let anyone that wants to come in, sign up, and publish the product. Guess what? Shitty results, right? Because what happens, it becomes such a low cost to entry that I'll sign up, I'll fill up the form, I'll put one product, and that's it. I'll never list my 800 products there because that's a lot of work. Let me try one and see if it works. And then I don't sell, then I churn. Then at some point we said, okay, let's do the opposite. Let's charge them a lot of money to come in. And then the people that came in were committed. And once they paid $300, $400, $500 to get into the system, they were gonna list every single product that they had on inventory. Then eventually they sold and they became happy. So you have to use the pricing of your product to actually drive the behavior you want. And that's what a lot of founders miss. They think that free is better. Free makes it easy to test, but not necessarily easy to sell.
Yeah, and I think the other mistake is believing that it's just one pricing. Like you have to test one pricing at a time, and you can test several different pricing strategies at the same time with different type of people profiles and even cities, right?
Exactly. Honestly, it's very hard for them to see that they're testing multiple things. You're very small in the beginning, right? Nobody really cares and knows about you, so it doesn't matter. If I'm pricing $100,000 to this guy and $2,000 to that one, how the hell would they know? Once you grow, then it's a different ballgame, but that's a problem for you to have later in life. In the beginning, test price all over the board.
Great. What are some of the red flags that have made you like reconsider investing after going through the process of due diligence?
Half-truths and surprises. Nobody dies of bad news. People die of scares, right? You don't want to scare your investor. Like, you can't tell me that this number is 3% and then I find out it's 6%. That's like, that's gonna destroy the deal. Because either you don't know your number, which shows incompetence in your side, or you're trying to fool me, which doesn't build the relationship that we want, or you think I'm an idiot, which also doesn't work well for the relationship. So it's like no half-truths, no hidden topics, right? Oh, you had a problem with a co-founder and he's suing you. Great, I can understand that. Don't let me find that out at the last minute by myself. When we start the due diligence, come up and say, look, you're gonna find this out. I had a problem with my co-founder. These are the reasons. This is what he's gonna tell you about me. And this is why he's right and this is why he's wrong. Because I will call him. If I'm doing my job right, I will call your former partners. And if you didn't tell me that you had a problem with him, either you don't know that you had a problem with him, or you tried to hid it from me. Either way, it's going to be a bad conversation. So those are the things that really create trouble, right? You tell me that somebody's full-time, and he's not. He has 3 other companies. Or you tell me that you're doing B2B enterprise sales, and then I go talk to your clients and they're all SMBs paying 50 reais a month. So you don't want surprises. You can give me the bad news. Look, we started in SMB, we figured out that that doesn't really work. We are now going after enterprise. These are the 3 enterprise clients we have, and that's really working. I can understand that, right? We've seen enough companies to understand that companies change, but you don't want to give me misleading information or chunks of information.
No, and especially you're building a partnership that it's gonna last a long, long time. You need to make sure that you enter that partnership with the right trust.
Exactly. And if we do enter and we find out later, you're liable. You're liable.
Absolutely. Let's say that we pass that hurdle on making sure that the decision is to negotiate a term sheet. What are the key terms that founders should be aware of in a term sheet, and what do you see are the common mistakes that they fail to either negotiate or understand?
So most founders will just focus on 3 things, right? They will focus on valuation. They will focus on control of the board, which is not really relevant, but we can talk about it. And they will spend a lot of time on founder vesting, right? And they don't look at anything else. Sure, valuation is an issue, more important than valuation for you, and you can run the math. Trust me on that. There are 2 things that impact your wealth at the end of the game, at the day. How big this company is, and how much of it do you own. In no point in this conversation is how much you raised. If you raised $1 million and you got 20% dilution, or if you raised $100 million and you got 20% dilution, it doesn't matter to you. What matters is how big this company exits. So a lot of people get very focused on the headline number. They either take more dilution or they take more money that they need, which we can talk about how it creates a bad culture, or they're bringing the wrong partner in, right? So that's one. The second one is, I might have, well, at first, no early stage investor wants to have control of the board, right? At some point towards Series B or C, you will lose the control. How many times have I seen things getting voted in a board of a startup? 1. And that was when one of the co-founders wanted to fire the other one. Then we had to take a formal vote. But other than that, the funds, I don't want to run this company. If I wanted to run this company, I would own 80% of the equity. I would be the founder. We trust you, the founder, to actually lead it, right? And we need you. That's the one thing that founders mostly don't understand, right? Some people get really freaked out about the drag along. The drag along is not against the founder. Because who is going to buy this company if the founder is saying, I don't want to work for the acquiring company. I'm not going to be here. I'm going to destroy this company. And that's a deal that simply doesn't exist. The founder in a startup, of course, when it becomes an ongoing concern much later on, becomes less relevant. But for the very early stage, you got a disproportionate amount of power. And most founders don't recognize that. But that's one. And then founder vesting. I always see founders fighting against the founder vesting. Again, founder vesting, if you're not going to be the lazy one that doesn't want to work, or the incompetent one that can't fulfill what needs to be done, That's the best thing for you, founder, to have. Because if your partner decides to get married and move to Thailand, he's not taking 50% of your company. Because you're going to be working here for the next 10 years, like crazy, in panic mode for the next 10 years. It's not fair that he takes exactly the same share of the company as you have. If you don't have founder vesting, go out now and please add it to your contract if you have a co-founder.
What are usually like terms that make sense for founder vesting?
Founder vesting is normally a cliff and then 4 years of vesting. It will get renewed on seed. It will get renewed on Series A. If the Series B investors are doing their work, it will get renewed in Series B. After that, much less relevant, right? Because then the company exists beyond the founders. But in a very early stage, you're a key part of this, right? Your company is not worth $10 million or $20 million today, right? It has a negative cash flow. If I do a DCF on a negative cash flow, your company is worthless. Actually, it has negative value because DCF of a negative cash flow is negative. Let me tell you that. The reason why I'm paying something beyond zero for your company, it's for the company you're going to build. And to build that company, you have to be here. If you're leaving, you don't deserve. So that's the logic behind the founder vesting, right? And it will get refreshed for the first sections. Then what founders shouldn't do, and this is much more common in Brazil than in Mexico and Colombia, right? But very common in Brazil, is get creative. Fuck no, please, guys. These contracts have been ironed out and tested and tried for the next 60 years in the US. All the possible problems have already come up, right? And they have been solved. And there is a framework on how to solve these problems. And then your cousin, which is a great, tax lawyer, has a great idea. And then he puts a clause in there that, honestly, I don't know where it's going to go wrong, but it will go wrong over the life of your company. So don't get creative. Print out the term sheet from NVCA. Use that. That is a contract that has been debugged. You use code, open source code that has been debugged because of that. Why are you going to invent new things on a freaking contract?
We'll make sure to share that information so that you guys have all those templates that make sense, and it doesn't make any sense to go back and rethink through them. And on that, Rodrigo, you mentioned, of course, founders get focused on valuation, control of the board, and founder vesting as the key terms. Is there anything else that they should be paying attention to that they don't?
Well, they don't pay attention on redemption, right? Which normally you don't see in LATAM, but I could put a clause of redemption, of interest, control over, vetoes, right? Vetoes is something that founders never look at. And you know where an investor that wants to screw is going to screw you? On the veto. Because he's going to veto you raising the next round of funding, and then he's going to veto for you from taking on debt, and then he throws your company. Don't ever, no matter who in the organization, give anyone individual veto rights. Because then you're hostage to a person that might just go crazy and ape shit crazy tomorrow. Right? Create rules like, this needs to be approved by 50% of the preferreds. Because then, and make sure that nobody has 50% of the preferreds, right? Because then you can create compositions of people that say, no, that guy's crazy. With 50% of the preferreds, we can approve it. So really think about quorums more than individual rights, right? Don't ever give me, Rodrigo, an individual right. Because I might sell all my shares and keep one, and I'll still have that veto. And it doesn't make sense from a governance perspective. So really create decisions and decision power, which is required, but based on class of shares and quorums.
And then you mentioned, Rodrigo, some of these terms are very, we're used to seeing them in the US, but you mentioned that not necessarily in Latin America. On that, how do you see, because you look at companies from all over the world, of course, mainly focus in Brazil, but like, what do you see the difference of looking at a deal that comes from, let's say, the US versus Brazil and the rest of Latam?
So I think the US, so it's not as much about the US, right? There are a bunch of deals that are done in safes, for example, right? In the US. But in the US, a safe deal is normally a very small fraction of the fund, right? So if this doesn't go right, it's like, sub 1%, who cares? Forget about it. I don't even want to spend time managing. And we've seen a lot of investors that are only investing in companies on safe, that they can't be as laissez-faire about their seed deals, right? You need to put some governance there to make sure that people are not doing things wrong. And that's actually healthy for founders. For example, one of the things, no seed company in the US has a board, right? Because it's not worth it for the funds to be engaged in that board, right? If you have a $500 million fund, why do I care about $1 million check, right? I'm just running a free option of coming into the next round. But for you, founder, what happens if you want to fire your co-founder that has 50% of the business just as you do? There's no way you can do that without having a board.
Yeah.
So it's good that it's bad for the fund to be engaged in $1 million check, right? But it's important for you, for the future of your company, to establish the right governance. So I think people went all crazy and, oh, let's just do deals as they do it in the US. But also $1 million check, $2 million check in the US buys you, what, 7 developers for a year? $2 million check in Mexico buys you 60. That company is materially more complex. You have to understand those complexities and adapt the way you use each contract to the local reality. And I see people just taking, either they come up with something completely different, which is not the US standard, or they apply the US standard without understanding the reality, and they get left with something that doesn't fit what they're building. Both tend to be problematic.
This has been absolutely amazing to close. I wanted to ask you like some final advice that you would give founders that are looking to raise their Series A, and also just like a plug on the type of deals that you want to see, and how should they reach out to you if they believe there's a fit for you and the firm.
Reach out to us is easy. First name @upload.venture. So Rodrigo for me, I look mostly at SaaS. Marco looks mostly at fintech. We share healthcare. So you can go to anybody in the team. It's all first name @upload.ventures. So very easy. We try not to make that the challenge for founders to raise.
You're not going to be able to hire anyone with the same name at Upload.
That's the beauty of a small team. We might call them by the last name so we don't have complexity. But I think the biggest thing is go build, right? Use fundraising and bringing capital as a means to build. It's not an end. I see a lot of people very concerned, oh, I want to be able to say that I raised the largest Series A in Latin America for whatever.com, when honestly, that doesn't fucking matter. What matters is how big will this company be and how capable are you of delivering that? So focus on execution, focus on building the right thing, and making sure your economics work. And everything will trickle out of that.
Amazing, Rodrigo. Thank you so much. This was absolutely incredible. Thank you for spending the time with us. We'll share a lot of the links, your email with everyone who's here. And And again, thank you for being with us today.
I often help companies raise Series A or Series B rounds, and one of my first recommendations for them is to hire JP Donoso. He's the founder of Optics, and this is a company that provides financial advice and services that enable you to prepare your company to raise a round. JP and his team helped us at Rappi for a really long time as part of the internal team, and they've helped dozens of companies complete very successful rounds. I know JP and his work personally, and I highly recommend it. He has worked with over 40 startups in Mexico, the US, and Colombia, including Via, On Top, Cobre, Tool, and many others. Hiring him is a no-brainer, so just do it.